Man, that's what you call like under the wire, man. Holy,
Dude,
holy.
I'm gonna close some stuff here on my computer and then we'll be good to go.
I've never started a webinar where the main speaker is not even on. I was like, this is what happens when you haven't done a Zoom webinar in like decades.
Yeah.
Like your main speaker, the Tony Robbins is not on Tony Robbins. And I'm excited to bring this on. We're now all these people rolling in right now.
Nice.
This is truly like raw and real for the people who actually are joining us right now. I couldn't get Mike on until like a second ago. So this is raw and real. So in the chat, guys, just so we know where you guys are logging in from, just make sure you hit panelists and hosts. Just log in where you guys are all logging in from, and then we're gonna get started in the next couple minutes here, and we're gonna get as people roll in here. So in the chat, guys, PPD Nation, come on, guys. Let's hear where you guys are all from. I'm going to put it in the chat right now. Calgary, Alberta. Mike, where are you coming from right now?
Kitchener, Ontario.
Geez, we got a silent crowd right now. PPD Nation, welcome to the first inaugural session of the 2023 PPD Biz Academy. And this session is entitled How to Lead Your Clinic. It's clinic's growth, that is. You know, the whole reason why we were looking at this PPD Academy and the sessions is to increase your business savvy. You know, we spent decades and decades on how to perfect our special tests, our movement screens, our outcome measures, on how to really determine how our patient's health is going and how it's progressing. And that's our superpower as physical therapists. But when it comes to determining our health status of our practices, that's our kryptonite. We have no idea how to interpret metrics, data into decisions. And so for today's session, we're going to invite the Peter Drucker of physical therapists, Mr. Mike Major, to the mic. And Mike, before I even get you to talk, I want to tell our attendees why they should be listening to you, the Peter Drucker of physical therapy, because this man right on the screen here, Mike Major, has 24 years of leadership experience, including leadership coaching with the Canadian Army Reserve. He's been a PT for 15 years, a clinic owner for 8 years, has led a group of 10 clinics, multi-million-dollar clinics to epic proportions. He is the founder of a practice management software that helps you as clinic owners simplify your life, decrease your operating costs, increase your profits. I'm so excited to hear about the man behind ClinicDash. Welcome to the mic, to the hot seat, Mr. Magic Mike. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks, Graham. That was a great intro. Yeah.
Well, you know, I'm really excited about ending the paralysis to analysis and becoming more decisive with data. And I'm hoping you're going to be able to help us through this. Now, our chat has been really like silent here.
It's because chat is disabled, Karim. So Kyle and another person mentioned chat's disabled. They can't get access to it. I just looked it up.
What?
See, yeah. Take a look at the Q&A.
Oh my God. Here, hold on 1 second, guys. We got the chat is disabled. Give me 1 second as we pause our thing. Let's see if I can just change that right now to our chat. Sorry, guys. You know, obviously I've been and I set this up and I'm looking at this right here. Sorry, guys. We're just going to just check this out here. More, let's hear, edit. Man. Okay, well, we're gonna go into this. We're gonna go back into this. So that's unfortunate that our chat is disabled right this second here. I'm just gonna try to see if I can figure this out here. Okay, so Mike, while I'm trying to figure this out, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got there, and hopefully I'll be able to get that chat back on.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. So
awesome.
I started practicing physio, transitioned from the Army into going to McMaster for physio school. And then once I got into the physio world, I came from a blue collar background and then started going to the healthcare provider world. Wasn't sure what I got myself into. And I liked things clean, efficient, and effective from my military background. And physio was a lot of gray, especially once you graduated, there was a lot of gray. So a lot of mentorship, a lot of learning. And I thought there's got to be an easier way to take the gray away from some of the stuff from the day to day. And so I started tracking metrics. I had a mentor that helped, and I met him back in 2010. And he strictly consults any type of business. And he helped me figure out how to measure a business, how to measure a clinic, and kind of step back from the clinical side and measure a business in a way that is important to the people that work there, that serves a purpose, and then how to try and put some systems in place. So I started way back in 2010 with some simple stuff, and then I've grown the spreadsheets and the stuff that I've tracked over the years and gotten to a point where we have clinic data management, clinic management as in a nutshell, down to a science where you can look and you can go as deep as you want, or you can stay really, really high level. And it's still really easy to make sure that you can make sure your clinic's running well, your team's running well, everybody from the front desk to the back end is running well, and your customer experience is great. So it's really focused on the customer experience, trying to change the conversation around let's chase money, changing it from chasing money to chasing outcomes, making sure clients are getting better, achieving their goals, and the money comes, right? And we know that as clinic owners over time. If we keep talking about money, we're getting stuck in incentives, raises, we're losing our way. And it's really, at that point, it becomes self-fulfilling in a way that isn't as fun because it turns into just a business and a business to make money, and you're looking and tracking your profits at the end of the month. And physios getting paid on splits that only care about, hey, this is how much money I'm making, and trying to change that conversation to say, how about let's take care of the person in front of us? We do that well, and the money comes. And we know as clinic owners, we can connect those two, but we don't have to talk about the money, right? That's the thing I wanted to get away from is, can I feel warm and fuzzy every time I come to work hard, and have good discussions around taking care of people in front of us, learning how to take care of people in front of us, measure that, and the physios get paid well as well.
Amazing. So we got a recap of Magic Mike, and I want to see our attendees today. Now that Kyle, thank you for letting us know the chat is working. In the chat, just going to test this out for everybody. Where are you watching this from right now? Just in the chat. Let's hear where everyone's. TO. Kyle's from TO, of course. Kyle, one of my classmates, great guy. Corey's from London. We got here Stephanie, Montreal. Kristen from Ottawa, Waterloo, Sherwood Park, Alberta, Brampton. Mike, welcome. All right. So in the chat, guys, I just want to so it can give us a framework in this chat. Just put in whether you're a clinic owner, solopreneur, or clinician in there. We just want to just get a gauge of who's on the chat on this call right now. We got clinic owner, owner. All right. So a keen group of clinic owners right in here. That's amazing. Okay, clinic owner / clinician. I love it. All right, Stephanie's got some hardcore experience with 4 clinics. That's amazing. All right. So on a scale from 0, physios love scales, right? So on a scale from 0 as being an absolute amateur to 5 as in absolute pro, how would you rate your comfortability with KPIs and metrics? So 0 is absolute novice, P is a pro at KPIs. Rate your comfortability with KPIs and metrics. 3.5 from Kyle, a 3. Threes. We got whoa, Stephanie. Whoa, that's good. Tammy, Kirsten, 3. Awesome, fantastic. Now in the chat, guys, I really want to get this really insightful for everybody and impactful. What's the one metric that keeps you up at night? What's the one metric that Magic Mike on the hot seat can help you with on this session? What's the one metric that keeps you up at night? Ooh. Was that too hard of a, is that we take the question here? Net profit. Yeah. Net profit. I was thinking profit was going to be like bottom line. Yeah. So, right, cost of goods, retention rate. Mike, what are you thinking about all these?
Yeah, it's focused. So business, PVA. Yeah.
Days. All right.
Retention. Yeah. So there's
I
a
knew,
lot of
I knew
things that we can.
PPAs were going to come up, right? That's
Yeah,
like a
dude.
hot topic right now. So I wanted to ask you guys on the call right here is client satisfaction. I love that, Kyle. So what's the number one metric you guys use to evaluate your front desk performance? Let's see what metric. Just the top of mind, guys. You might use a gamut. I just want to see what's their top of mind when you hear front desk performance. Client feedback. Interesting. Booking rate. Good. Awesome. All right. And guys, so I'm going to flip it over to the clinical side of things. What's your number one metric you use to help coach and guide your clinicians? What's your number one metric? What's the first one you look at? This is where paralysis by analysis comes in here. All right. All right. Tammy's got a good one right there, right? That's awesome. Yeah. Mike, great one right there.
Yeah, that's good.
Mike, any of those stand out for you?
Yeah, well, initial assessments to treatments is PVA again, PVA and utilization, right? Return
Gotcha.
patients and patient referrals. Those all are part of the story, right? And so that's where we want to talk about clinic owners. A lot of times are worried about outputs, and those are our things. So outputs are important to the clinic owner, but if we talk about outputs to everybody working at the clinic, those are meaningless, right? They can't. And what I mean by that is PVA, net margin, net profit, all those things are not important to the people that are working in the clinic. If you talk to the clinic about those kind of things and people within the clinic, first of all, they can't control them individually on an individual level. We want to talk about the inputs, the things that are part of getting those results, those outputs, the things that each individual can control, and we coach them on those things, because then it results in an improved PVA. It results in improved net margins, net profits, return patients, client feedback, and client satisfaction improvement, all that stuff, right? And so we coach on the things that each individual can control, and then it results in a lot of the things that people are worried about, which are the outputs, the results of those actions, right? Because
yeah. So like, let's start from the beginning. What's the first step? Let's just imagine I'm not Stephanie with 5 clinics and making a gazillion dollars, and she's probably in Tahiti right now. Let's say I'm literally in my basement in Calgary. I'm starting from scratch. Where do I start from? Right, as my primary like pathway to growth.
The initial pathway is you're starting with know who your customer is, know your demographic. So, for example, when I opened up the clinic that I have right now, I looked at who's my demographic, who are they exactly, and I want to love them, right? I love them. I learn about their personality, learn about their culture, learn about their decision-making behaviors, and then what's my mission, vision, values? What's my culture at the clinic? And then I try and see how can I provide value from my client perspective and then my clinician perspective, and how do I provide value, and what does that look like as an experience for the people that work at the clinic and for the people that come to the clinic to get care. And I map that out. And once I map that out, then I say, okay, these are the inputs, the things that everybody's doing that can have shared roles and responsibilities. These are the results, the outputs that I as a clinic owner am watching for. But then I don't talk to my team about those. I talk about, hey, these are your actions. These are your focus roles. This is your shared accountability. This is what you can change. And this is what makes you feel powerful on a day-to-day basis that you're contributing to the team that results in the outputs that I'm looking for. So you start with culture, mission, vision, values, who your client is, and then you map out that experience from the day they think about calling you and contacting you to the day they complete care, or depending on what that looks like within your clinic, you map that out. When they're contacting each individual and coming into contact with each individual person in the clinic, map that out. And then you map out, okay, whose roles and responsibilities are going to be in there, and how can they control those, and how do I measure their role and responsibility each time they're coming in contact with a client. Now you've got your metrics, your KPIs that match and align with what your clients want, what your clinicians and your team wants, and you're winning at that point. And then you constantly test, right? You test and retest everything. So in the clinic, if you come to my clinic, everything's an experiment. We're changing and trying to change everything. And if something's not going right, we change and retest and test and retest. And one individual might be trying something new or different over here from a cancellation policy or process, and another individual will be trying this. And then we say, okay, which one's the most effective? Now everybody try this for a bit of time, and then we test it and we measure it. So everything, because your client demographic will change over time, right? So for example, if you opened 10 years ago, your healthcare decision makers were, potentially 40-year-old females that are usually the decision makers, and their children were coming in to see you. Those children are now teenagers, and the decision making is changing around that. So then you change your processes, you change how you're approaching them, how you're having discussions with them, how you're decision making, right? So it's all about personalities and culture and how you approach that, and make sure that you're having discussions that are important to the client and important to the people that work there. So you create that shared accountability that Cindy was mentioning, and the shared accountability to make everybody successful. And now, because you're testing at the same time, you're learning about each individual in the clinic and how they're performing, so you can coach them in a meaningful way for them.
Oh man, that sounds like an infinite process here, right?
Yes, it's constant, right? Like once you, so the hardest part is to get started, because to get started is some work. But once you've got that started, it's a beautiful thing, because then you're just playing here and there with it, depending on what you're getting for feedback from your clients, from your clinicians, from the front desk team, from your customer experience team, all that stuff. So the hardest part is to get it started. Once you've got it started, then you just test and play, test and retest to really find your sweet spot. And your sweet spot's always changing potentially too, as clinicians change, as the front desk changes, as you change your goals, all that kind of stuff. So it gets fun at that point. The hard part is this getting started part.
So like just to parlay what you just said, and Cindy was talking about shared accountability. It sounded like you were talking also about shared collaboration between like clients and practitioners. So where do you look at, you know, your mission, vision, all that stuff, and like how do you turn chatter into actual effective performance, right? Because like if you're here listening to everybody and you're parlaying, where's that set point for you where you're still thinking with your mission, vision? Like how do you balance that?
Yeah, we really focus on the language, right? So the language I use in clinic when we're talking about performance, when we're talking about, you know, whether it's a clinician and coaching a clinician's performance or talking about interactions with clients, I'm always focused on the language I'm using that aligns with what we're trying to achieve. And then we do personality testing with everybody on the team, and we do personality testing different ways over the course of time, right? So this year, recently, we did another personality test is just on how people think. And so what we're trying to do is I'm trying to use what our mission, vision, values, our culture is, and then I approach our coaching and the conversations we have around that in a meaningful way for each individual, but also that aligns with our culture all the time, right? And aligns with mission, vision, values, their goals based on their metrics, all that stuff. So it's hard.
So when you recruit these people, are you using like a strength finder, a disc profile to match your mission, vision, and all that?
Yes, we're using a disc profile initially, depending on the role they're in. Because when you look at the disc has been shown, they've done research on the disc, and they've shown that people in certain positions fulfilling certain roles match certain personalities, right? And so we look for those personalities when we do personality profiles with the disc. And that's our initial step. Before we even do an interview, we do a disc profile on everybody, and then then it gives us an indication of, okay, how does their resume look? How does their disc profile look? Do we want to do an initial interview with this person?
Are there any for clinical owners looking at that starting phase? Are there any other tests? Do you use like a strength finder, like that strength finder? Use anything else for that?
At that point, it's the initial interview. So the interview that we do is based on a lot of psychology, and and so what I've done is I've gone and learned more about interview processes and how to ask certain questions, and then I have different teammates as part of the interview process answer questions that might be either similar that they identify with or different from what I ask, to make sure that we're looking for certain strengths and certain values, certain experiences, that kind of stuff, to recruit members on our team.
Yeah, I love how you're drawing in your leadership experience, 24 years with the Canadian Army Reserves, and putting it into practice. This is a fascinating conversation. I know many of our clinical owners are looking for the meat and potatoes of this conversation. Was how do you know which metrics are most important to focus on?
For us, what I've done, because I've mapped out the whole patient experience from the time they contact us to the time they complete care, for example, when we're talking about physiotherapy, we've mapped that out. And then what I've done over time is I've just made a lot of mistakes and learned. And I've learned about what inputs are, or leading indicators and lagging indicators, or inputs or outputs, however you want to talk about them. And I found a core 4 that we coach our physiotherapists with, and a core 4 that we coach our front desk and our customer experience team with. And those core 4, if you look at them, they will affect everything else. So we don't talk about PVA, because PVA is an output. Technically, when you look at PVA, an individual clinician cannot control the number of assessments they get. It depends on too many other factors and variables. So it's not fair to talk to them strictly about PVA as a performance indicator. So we don't talk about PVA. We'll talk about other things. And so we can move on and talk about that kind of stuff if you want to, those core four.
Yeah, it's up to you, man.
Yeah.
You're the magic mic. Let's hear
Okay.
it.
So what we've looked at is that we look at fall offs or a drop off rate, because that's when you look at that, the corollary to that or the opposite to that is your completed plans of care. We'll look at your NPS or satisfaction surveys, right? So when you do satisfaction surveys to get client feedback, we're looking at your NPS rating. And we're looking at two other core measures. One's a book plan to recommended plan. So for example, when someone comes in for an assessment and the physio says, we're going to see you twice a week for 4 weeks and then once a week for 4 weeks, for example, and that's a total of 12 visits, right? When you do the handoff to the front desk and the front desk schedules that, then the booked plan to the recommended plan is the ratio of how many appointments they book at the first visit at their assessment to the total number of recommended appointments. And we have certain goals built around that. And so there's a lot of cognitive biases. There's a lot of psychology that goes into the process of why we do it that way. Because what happens is the physio states the plan and the physio works on the plan with the client and make sure it's client focused, specific, and in line with their goals. Then they say, this is our plan. They do the handoff, introduce the front desk. They say to the front desk, let's say it's Mary. Mary, we're going to see this person for twice a week for 4 weeks, and then once a week for 4 weeks. Mary says it again to the client. So now you have a chance to read body language. Mary has a chance at the front to get to know that person and they can book the plan there. And so you're getting a lot of feelings around, do they trust the plan? Are they going to follow through? Do they have any other questions, right? And so there's a lot of cognitive biases that you're searching through and trying to get to know this person well. And you're trying to see, did I deliver a great plan? Was my assessment quite thorough in what they were looking for? And was my front desk able to take care of it? So there's that shared accountability again, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we look at another one, which is the ratio of actual plan to recommended plan. So once someone's completed their care, how many visits did they come for? And how many visits did we actually recommend? And how close is that? And we use that as a teaching tool, right? Because that's about prognosis and being able to prognosticate for the physiotherapist. And we use that we'll type assessments by body area as well, so that certain physios can learn from others, because some people will excel in certain areas, other people excel in others. And we use it as a mentorship tool to help learn to prognosticate well, so that we're delivering a great service. So we can say, we're working on delivering a better and better service, so we can prognosticate really well, deliver what we're going to say we can deliver, and then we move from there and look at our satisfaction surveys to make sure we're doing that as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And so that was now. Any questions in the chat, guys, on those Fab Four there? I know that Mike was talking about essentially the E-myth, right? The entrepreneurial, but any questions about that Fab Four before I ask my next burning question?
Yeah, Kyle, it's the actual plan to the recommended plan. So how many visits they actually come for as part of their plan of care, and how many did we recommend on the first day? And how close are we getting for prognostication there? So it lets us know, for example, when you come for an assessment and someone says, this is my goal, and you say, this is the treatment plan to help you reach this goal, how close are we at prognosticating that? How good are we at saying we delivered that service? And so that helps us, along with the book plan to recommended plan ratio and that actual plan to recommended plan. And then you've got your satisfaction score, which is your NPS. It helps bring that all full circle to say, did we deliver a good plan of care? Did they believe in it? And were they happy with our service?
So we're gonna hold, Cindy, we're gonna hold that question for a little bit later, because I was thinking about that, but I got a couple of questions that we're gonna lead up to that in a second. But Cindy, we're gonna definitely address that meeting with physical therapists and evaluating a little bit later on. Okay, so Mike, you've measured these things. A lot of people get into this thing, myself included, get paralysis by analysis. How do we leverage this data to move forward and not get overwhelmed? What's your strategy on this?
Right. So what we do is we look at that data at certain time periods, right? So we're talking specifically about clinician performance here. There's other things we can talk about and other things we can do, but specifically for clinician performance and how they're delivering care, we look at it at a 3-month interval, a 6-month interval, and a 1-year interval. And it starts to give us trends. And so, for example, if we have a new grad start with us, usually those metrics aren't accurate until they get at least to 3 months, closer to 6 months for those measures to be accurate. You can start to see some trends and you can start to coach based on those trends. But what we do is take those 4 KPIs and we coach based on what we're seeing. So satisfaction score is something you can use really easily. And then how your handoff is going, how people are believing in their plan of care right after the assessment and how that's going. And then what we do, because we can track that, we're going to start to track also fall offs in the background, like we had talked about as part of those 4 measures. And we're going to see, hey, how many visits do people fall off at? Is that the number that was similar to the ratio that we talked about? Are they falling off before you even get to a reassessment? So for example, if they book at the first assessment half their plan and they only get to that place and then they fall off consistently, then we're saying, okay, are we having a goals and a reassessment issue? Are we having a communication issue? We can start to talk about that and coach that. And we really focus on just those 4 because it covers all the other bases. If you rock those, you're going to rock PVA, you're going to rock your cancellation rate. Your cancellation rate is going to be low. Your no-show rate is most likely going to be low as well. And so, and utilization then, because if you knock it out of the park with those 4, your utilization is going to be high as well, right?
So Mike asked a really interesting question, and it's one that a lot of clinic owners struggle with is, and I think you just mentioned that initially, was how do you get collaboration from a business side of you and not, just toppling or corrupting your clinician's confidence on what they're trying to deliver? What's your strategy on that?
Yeah, and that's why we've gone to these ones specifically, Mike, is because they're more of inputs. They're things that the clinician can control. And the way I coach these specifically is about delivering service to the person in front of you. It's about taking care of the person in front of you. When you look at those 4, really all they measure is, did you do what you said you were going to do as a physiotherapist? How did you deliver on that? And were they happy with what you delivered on? And those 4 measures measure that. So we changed the conversation into not being about the business, not saying you need to get more visits, you need to get a higher PVA, you got to see people more times a week. We say, can you take care of the person in front of you? Are they happy with what you're doing? And are they completing that plan of care, right? And so I really try and switch it to make sure that they're focusing on the person in front of them and delivering a great service, so that my concern and what's happening potentially in physio and some of the trends we're seeing, or some of the stuff we're seeing at least in social media as well, is that physios are unhappy in the roles, right? Because now it's such a focus on splits. I need to make as much money as I can. And if they're having those conversations with owners as well about PVAs and all these other things about split and how much money you're bringing in and all these things, all we're having is discussions about money. We're not having discussions about serving clients. So I changed the focus to serving clients and things they have in control so they can help develop themselves, because we use it as a mentorship tool and a learning tool rather than all the other stuff, which is unfulfilling. It's fulfilling in the short term and you get short-term gratification from it, but long-term, you're going to think, I'm grinding for PVA, I'm grinding to make more money, and I'm always focused on money. So the other thing we bring it back to then is the psychology and cognitive biases that we have as humans. And the psychology there is that if you think about money, you make decisions about money and you get caught up in the money. And so are you really making decisions about that person in front of you? Are you helping them reach their goals? Or are you reaching your goals of making more money, filling your schedule? And so if someone gives me pushback, I've had one person in the last 1 or 2 years to give me pushback. And I really talk to them and say, if it's about the money, long-term, you're not going to be happy. And short-term, this clinic's not a good place for you, because I want to make sure you focus on you getting people better and taking care of the people in front of you. If you do that, guaranteed the money will come, right?
So Mike, given that you have this like large psychological or behavioral psychological basis, are you, when you have these conversations, I'm just echoing with Mike saying, are you parlaying it into their sort of long-term goals, their bucket list, their career aspirations? Are you balancing the two in that conversation? What's your strategy?
Yeah, we do a lot of goal setting around that. So what we talk about, we have a mentorship program that we do that's all mapped out. And it's, again, we put a lot of work into the mentorship program, but it plays into all these metrics and how we're treating the person in front of us. So we talk about goal setting, and people have access to their scoreboard and how they're doing in these 4 metrics on a daily basis. They're looking at them, they can see them. And so we're constantly talking about and coaching how they're doing based on what their goals are and how they want to develop long-term. Plus, within ClinicDash, within the management system I built, they see their goals there. So those core 4 things that we're measuring their performance on, they see their goals there and how they're achieving those goals and where they are in achieving those goals. So we're constantly trying to coach them and help them with those, and bring it back to what Karim's talking about long-term fulfillment, about where they are in their career pathway and how we can help them build their career and help them develop as physiotherapists. That's an important part, right? Really caring about the person.
Awesome. That's great. So can you talk to us a little bit more about the front desk? What's your core with the front desk?
For the front desk, we're looking at lead conversion. So really, when it's assessments booked, when someone calls you, how are they converting that lead? And we break that down a little bit further, but the basic one is looking at lead conversion. Then we look at the reschedule rate. The reschedule rate is for the number of people that call to cancel or contact the front desk to cancel. of that total, how many can the front desk turn around and reschedule instead of cancel? And so we look at reschedule rate, and then we look at the team satisfaction survey, because satisfaction within the clinic is a team sport, right? That's all based on the team and the experience the whole team provides for the client that's coming in. And then we look at the clinic's book plan to recommended plan. So that's the amount of appointments that are booked in relation to the total plan recommendation at the first assessment. And so the front desk plays a huge role in the experience, especially at that first day at the assessment, introducing themselves, making sure when the client comes in, they get greeted in a certain way. And we work a lot on body language, eye contact, smiling, all these things that give people a positive experience, using someone's name, right? And letting them know, hey, if someone's running behind or someone's going to be right with them, we use all those things to make sure we feed into a positive experience for that person. And then we do the same thing at the end where each clinician reintroduces by name the front desk, and they have a conversation and they book those appointments, and we've reiterated the plan 3 times. So there's a lot of psychology behind why we do all these things, so that we can make sure that book plan, that trust, and that rapport we're trying to build at the first assessment, we can get a gauge of.
That's genius. That's awesome. Sorry, did we get all 4? All 4?
Yeah, that was 4.
Okay,
Reschedule
sorry.
rate, lead conversion, team follow-up. Yeah. And
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, no, I love, so I wanted to ask you about when you said you mapped out the entire experience from start to end.
Yeah.
So you've obviously, when we talked about how you get started, you've obviously thought about the entire 10-star experience. Forget about the Google 5-star. You're talking about the 10-star experience of what you would love to have a patient go from start to finish. When you're looking at your front desk staff, you're looking at disc profile as well to see where they're at in terms of, is there any other types of things that you look at to help you execute this sort of plan of care?
Yes. So when we're looking for front desk, we used to, before COVID, we used to do group interviews. So we'd invite all the people that applied for that job in person, because what we found is, say, for our full-time position for the front desk, we'd have 300 people apply. As soon as we ask everybody to come in person for a group interview, 50% of the people don't attend right off the bat. And that's happened consistently. We've had, over the last 8 years, we've had 3 front desk application processes. And so we do group interviews. We see how people treat each other when they're coming in that group interview, because we'll have a staggered group interview process where 20 or 30 people come in staggered blocks, right? So 30 people in 20 minutes, another 30 people in the next 20 minutes, all that kind of stuff. We see how they interact. We see how they treat each other. We see their body language. Plus, they're filling out the disc profile on paper in front of us. So we see what they're doing. Are they researching? Because some of the words in the disc profile we use are really challenging. Plus, it's a little bit of a mathematical calculation as well. So we see how they're handling those challenging situations. And then we move on to, we'll have a first, second, and third interview from there. So it's all about making sure within that pathway that we talked about, there's a lot of psychology and cognitive biases that occur about people's past experiences, especially with healthcare, unfortunately, right? Like healthcare, sometimes in Ontario, at least, where healthcare and public healthcare isn't about the person, it's about the system. We want to try and change that and flip it and make sure they have a great experience. So planning that out is about, how do we psychologically, even without that person knowing, make sure we're hitting them with really positive thoughts and really positive input as they're there, so that they can relax in the space, so we can truly assess them, truly get them better. Because if they're not relaxed in the space, it's going to be much harder just to get them better, right?
That's amazing. So so we talked about front desk, clinician. Is there, on a clinic owner, is there a Fab 4 that you look at?
Honestly, for myself, I use the same. So I turn the Fab 4 into the Fab 8, and I look at them by individual and by the clinic as a total as well. Average across the clinic. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. So you're keeping it super easy for yourself, but you're like looking at your top 8, splitting it up into those two components of that. So how often do you, sorry, I want to go back to the front desk for a second. Do you do the same kind of cadence of the as you do with clinicians?
Yeah, 3, 6, and 12 months, and they have access to them live. They see them every day, and they can move the needle on those. We coach on those, and we do something similar with our calls, right? Where we type calls. We can get into the weeds a little bit, where we type different calls by the questions people ask. We look at days wait for assessment. We look at the referral source. We ask about referral sources in 2 to 3 different ways. just to confirm, because most of the time, if you think about when you ask someone a question, if you ask a question that's a yes or no question, they're not going to give you the answer that they want to give. They're going to give you the easiest answer and the fastest answer in that moment.
Right.
Same thing about referral source. And so referral source is really important to me because I want to learn where someone's coming from. I want to learn if I can thank someone, but I want to learn about the networks that we've built and all that kind of stuff. So we ask it the minimum of 2 up to 3 times just to really learn about truly how they heard about us. Because a lot of times on the phone, they'll say, oh, I found you on Google. But when they come in for the assessment, they'll say, actually, I heard about you from my neighbor, then I looked you up on Google. Google was just the easiest answer at the moment. That was in their brain, right? So you want to really learn about that kind of stuff. And we type all that, and then we can teach our front desk or have our front desk learn. So we teach them strategies on how to have conversations on the phone, and then we audit that as well.
Awesome. And so for your 8 benchmarks as a clinical owner, what's your strategy of how you navigate those 8 in terms of like weekly, monthly, like daily, what are you doing?
I'll look at those weekly, right? So weekly from an immediate coaching perspective, and then I'll look at them from a long-term coaching perspective and strategies perspective. I'll look at 3, 6, and 12, right? Because that's going to help fulfill my strategy. Where are we going? The other thing I do with those numbers and within the management system that I've created is I do projections. And I don't know if a lot of people are familiar with projections, but I project our performance into the future so that every clinic's going to be a little bit different on the model they have and how they practice, but everybody's going to have a sweet spot where when they do projections, you're going to hit the spot where those projections are very, very accurate, and you can make a judgment for the rest of the month on if you're going to be where you need to be, and you can start to pull some levers. If you're getting too many leads, too few leads, if your lead conversion's down, if your utilization is up, you can coach your team and have controls in place to make sure your performance stays like this rather than being up and down, which is kind of what we want to talk about in the future too, is the tipping point, right?
Yeah, definitely. So, so your strategy right now for people on the call here is that it's based on your projections, and then you're using those 8 rocks to look at how now your projections are based on quarterly, on semi-annually, on annually. What are you looking at?
The projections I do are based on monthly. So I want to see how I'm going to perform on a monthly basis, so I can change my marketing spend. I can talk to my referral sources. I can talk to my network. I can coach my team immediately and make immediate change. So I know for myself, for my projections, once I'm 10 business days into the month, those projections and my performance for the whole month is set. I know how I'm going to perform. So then I coach my team based on that. If we need to lift that up, or if we need to say, hey, the clinic's getting a little too busy. And when the clinic gets a little too busy, what's going to happen is certain caseloads are going to tank and start to do this as well, right? And so then I want to make sure I coach that well in a way that's important to the clinicians and that resonates with the clinicians in a way that they can control and manage on their own and stay with the front desk.
So are there benchmarks to can you help us with that?
Yeah. So every clinic will have different benchmarks based on the practice that you have in the model of care. For me, I know my benchmark is that if my clinic hits a 78% utilization, I'm starting to play with fire. If I get to 82%, all of a sudden what's going to happen at 82% utilization, my clinician's PVA is going to drop. So we never talk about it, but I use it as a tracking tool. My PVA will start to drop if utilization gets too high. My lead conversion will start to decrease because we don't have enough space to get new assessments in. And then what'll happen there is my fall offs then and my cancellations will start to increase too, because there aren't enough appointments to get new assessments in and new treatments booked into the future in. So then you'll have this tip happen where my performance in my clinic will start to decrease and go down, and you'll have this ebb and flow. So we try and hover. I usually try and hover around 78%. If we get to 82%, then I've got to decrease my marketing, and I've got to coach the team a little bit more to say, how are you planning your treatment planning? Because there's a lot of cognitive biases for clinicians as well. If a clinician looks into next week and they are fully booked, they're going to think, oh man, I'm too busy. I got to change my treatment plan to make sure that I can see this person and get them better, but I'm going to see them less because I'm too busy. They get caught up in themselves, right? And they think about busy. They don't think about what's best for the person in front of them. So then the other thing is we try and make sure that the front desk controls the schedule, and I try and coach the clinicians to don't think about busy. Think about what's right for the person in front of you. The front desk will make the rest happen about the schedule. Because what'll happen is clinicians will start to sabotage themselves. And I've seen that. I've seen it for years. We've tracked data. Oh gee, we're going on 10 years of tracking data in spreadsheets. And I guaranteed every time, and every clinician's a little different based on how they practice and how well they perform. but they get to a certain utilization in their schedule, and then all of a sudden they change their treatment plans based on how busy they are, their cancellation rate increases, their fall off rate increases, and then the front desk has a hard time converting leads because they can't get people in.
Before I ask you another question here, guys in the chat, what is your tipping point metric? So we talked about, Mike said his is one of them is utilization. Can you guys, like, in the chat, just drop in what's your sort of tipping point metric that you utilize in your own practice before I ask this next question? So guys in the chat, what's that one metric that, you know, if it goes haywire, things are going to go sideways, or it goes too high, too low? What are we looking at, guys? So Kyle's got utilization. Kyle, what's your number? What's your percentage? Just curious how close that is to yours, Mike.
Yeah.
Depends on the clinic.
Yeah. So I have providers that'll sit at, some of the providers I have, they'll sit at 84 to 86%, and they can hum at that place. And then I'll have other providers that they'll sit around the 75%, right? Yeah. So it's usually around 80%, whereas that sweet spot is where you'll see lead conversion from the front desk start to decrease and all that stuff.
I think it's 70, 80. Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. So sorry, Mike, go on.
That's okay. So once you know that, and you see all these other factors coming into play, then I start to coach my team. Because even once you're coming up to that, your team can start to, again, think about being too busy. And so as soon as that starts to happen, I start to coach the team and say, don't worry about the schedule, worry about the person in front of you, right? And so then what we try and do is control and stay in that sweet spot. So if we always have space for clients that are going to book their treatment plans, but also new assessments coming in, and we try and balance that. But we have a lot of conversations around that. So every person on the team knows that we have hit this kind of tipping point, and then we try and manage it.
Mm-hmm. Are there other tipping points that you look at where that you're open to sharing?
Yeah. So that's the main one, because it'll affect everything else. It's this cascade effect, right?
Gotcha.
The other thing will be the number of leads. So if you know your sweet spot for number of leads that you need, so for example, once you've been tracking for a while, this is another way I use PVA, not as a coaching tool, but as a tracking and calculation tool. Once you know your sweet spot where your clinic sits at an average for PVA, plus you know your tipping point for utilization, and you can get that down to each individual clinician. You can look at each individual clinician and calculate how many leads they need to sit at that sweet spot. And so then I look at my marketing and my marketing spend, and I look at the number of leads I need, and I make sure those two match up. Because if my marketing's too high, for example, or my referral network is getting busy and they're referring in, then that's my other tipping point. Once I know that I'm trending in my projections for those number of leads, I need to talk to whoever's referring more when I look at my referral sources and say, really appreciate the leads. Make sure we space those out a little bit more, or something like that, right? Yeah. Or we talk to the front desk, and if we're doing paid marketing, which we're doing at the moment, my easiest thing is just to decrease my paid marketing, because my referral networks are doing well, and I don't want to tell my referrers not to refer. So I just decrease my paid marketing, bring that right down, let my referrers keep doing the great things that they're doing, and I go out there and thank them and take care of that, right? So I just, there's some personal trainers that refer to us and different things like that, and I'll just say, thanks so much for the referrals. Yeah.
Amazing. So Monica asked a great question. If you have a new client calling into the book, forcing your utilization rate to go up, do you turn them away so as to keep your space for the current clients?
So what we try and do, because we really work hard to stay in that sweet spot, we haven't had to turn anybody away, but that's why we also track, and that comes down to another KPI that we track, is days wait. And so we track the days wait for someone to get in for an assessment. So if someone has to wait, there's a certain thing that I've known just from digging deeper, and this is where you can get paralysis by analysis here. But once you have some of the basic things that we've talked about, and you have the deeper stuff that supplies those metrics, you can look deep. So for example, for ourselves, if we have an assessment that has to wait longer than 3 days, they found us through paid marketing, not word of mouth referral or anything like that, and they live more than 5 kilometers from the clinic, the likelihood that they're going to cancel or reschedule and not come down the road is higher. So that's what we've learned. And so what we want to do is we try and make sure that those people at our assessments, we try and get them in as soon as we can, because they're new to us. They're more than 5 kilometers away from us. they've never experienced a clinic and they don't know the value that we provide, even though we coach that over the phone and we try and the front desk tries to deliver that over the phone. That's a higher likelihood that they're not going to go back to see us. But we do have times when I've tried to, again, everything's a test. So I'll try and test the clinic and push its utilization, right? And then we will have people who, if they have to wait too long to come to see us, we have had people go to other clinics. And so we don't turn them away, Monica, we still try and get them in. And then we say we put them on a cancellation list to try and get them in sooner. But if that still happens, then we end up sending them away. If that's happening, then that's a me problem as a clinic owner. I need to make sure I'm managing my performance from a marketing and referrals perspective.
So that was awesome. Stacey asked a follow-up question is, do you set a max number of new visits per day to allow for like space for follow-ups?
It's something we used to do. So I used to put assessment blocks into the schedule where we'd have, so we could guarantee certain assessment times. I've moved away from that because we found that sweet spot of some of the metrics that we've just talked about. With us finding that sweet spot, it's really worked well for us. The hardest thing we have now is filling in for someone that's new to us. It takes us about 6 months. If they're a new grad, it takes about 6 months to fill their mornings. That's the hardest part to spot. And it's kind of the late mornings as well. That's the hardest spot to fill up. So we try and book people in there if we can, but we don't. I've gotten away from allowing a max number of new visits just to make sure that we can have space in the schedule. I got away from that because we found those sweet spots, and it's worked for the last, I stopped doing the assessment blocks probably 7 years ago.
Okay. So going on in terms of clinicians and utilization rate, is that one of the key things that a lot of people are asking is, what is the sweet spot for you to add another clinician based on data? Tell me your thoughts.
Right. So once you found that tipping point, and you can hover at that tipping point and stay consistent at that tipping point for a period of time. So for me at the clinic, I like to keep it at 6 months. If we can work at that tipping point and stay consistent, and our cancellation rate and our fall off rate aren't increasing, everybody on the team is performing well, plans of care are happening and completing well, all those things, then after 6 months of being consistent like that, I know I'm ready to add a new clinician. And when I add a new clinician, based on those metrics and based on past experience and testing the team, you'll see a blip in the performance. The performance will drop a little bit short term for the first couple of weeks. And then that's where I know for my projections, I'll work harder in my referral network, my paid marketing to get those leads up to make sure that doesn't happen, because now I've strategized around that. And then you can add that new clinician and then get them on their way while everybody else is maintaining their caseloads.
Cool. That's awesome. Yeah. And then, so do you get good buy-in from your clinicians when you're using that sort of methodical process that when they add, because I know in some of these bigger chains that when they're adding clinicians and they're not having these conversations with them, there's a lot of discord between clinicians that are like, oh man, here they're adding another one, right? So does this help with the collaboration and sort of that collaborative effect?
Yeah, and what we do actually when we talk about these measures and how we measure performance as part of the interview process around expectations. And we talk about how we're measuring inputs, things that are important to the client, things that are about delivering service to improve your practice. And we get buy-in that way before we even hire them. So if someone's standoffish and doesn't like those, and we try and coach around them during the interview process, and they're just like, yeah, I don't like that. That's not the clinician for us. It doesn't align with our culture, and it doesn't align with the clients that are coming in that value the care that we provide, right? And so, and then the other piece that we do that is probably different than other clinics, because of all the measures we have in place and all the work I've done in the background, we don't do split percentages. I pay hourly. So I love, part of owning a business for me, and this is different for different clinic owners, but it's a shared pain. If the clinic's not doing well and someone's getting paid hourly to sit there, then that's me saying to myself, I've got to make sure that the clinic does well, continues to build. I've got to coach my team. I've got to get referral networks built. I've got to go out and do that. And then if the clinician's doing well and getting paid hourly, and I'm doing well getting paid because I'm the clinic owner, then we're all in a great place. So there's shared pain and shared gain. And so I've switched my model to go from a split to an hourly because of all the work we've done based on these metrics. And having that makes it more predictable for the clinicians. They have a consistent income. They don't have to worry about vacations, all that stuff. They're a true employee. And then it's made it consistent from a financial modeling perspective as well, even though for financial modeling, because I've worked so hard in the beginning stages of financial modeling and then taking those financial models and moving it to how is it important to the client and how do these numbers affect it? I don't use financial models anymore. I use these metrics we're talking about and some more in-depth ones to make sure that if those are good, I know the finances are good.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Cindy just asked a follow-up question on, do you offer bonuses based on that strategy?
We do a profit sharing. And so the profit sharing that we do is based on two factors. One is loyalty, so how long you've worked at the clinic, and it's based on days. So if someone's worked 5 days for us and we do a profit share at the end of the year, their 5 days are weighted, so they'll get a share of that profit share. And then the other part of that is based on, it's a team evaluation. And so each member of the team evaluates each other and their performance for the past year based on a scale of 0 to 3. And then it's anonymous, you put it into a box, and then I tally them all up, and it's weighted for loyalty is 25%, and the team rating from each individual on the team for each member is 75%, and then that makes up their bonus structure.
Awesome. And so a question for you, like, this sounds really complicated. And it's awesome and complicated. What advice do you give to clinical owners on the call right now when things are fluctuating? Like what advice can you give to the clinical owners on the call here?
The biggest thing is to look at if you look at your base metrics. So look at the number of assessments per week, the number of treatments per week, look at your utilization, right? Those 3 things will start to give you an idea of why things are ebbing and flowing a little bit. You're scratching the surface, but then you can start to coach your team, right? And then if you talk to your front desk, and if you're not measuring leads and calls and all that kind of stuff, then you can talk to your front desk and ask how conversations are going. How are the new calls going? What's going on there? Are we turning people away? Or are we not getting people in, or people aren't converting? And then I start to look at what's happening. Is it a front desk issue? Is it my treating team's issue, or is it something external to that, right? And so I look at those 4 base things then: treatments per week, visits per week, and the utilization, plus then lead conversion with my front desk. And that'll start to give you an idea on where I can coach. You're just scratching the surface. And the important part here is those are all inputs. Those are all things people can control to a point. Well, utilization, not so much, right? And assessments I control, but you're trying to look at that and be able to coach so you can see where things are going on. The ultimate would be able to go deeper into some of the stuff we've talked about, so you don't get stuck. Because if you coach on the basics, you're coaching on things that end up being outputs. People are just saying this is a numbers game then, and it's a numbers game to make more money. Where you want to coaching, and from a leadership perspective and a psychology perspective, you want to coach based on what's important to each individual and what matches their personality and why they became a physio. And so that's where I've gone more this direction instead of that stuff.
That's awesome. I think Kyle wanted to ask a question, but he wanted to get on the mic, so I'm just going to pop him on the mic. Kyle, go ahead.
Oh, Mike, amazing, by the way. Like Mike and I've known each other for quite a while, and the detail and structure is, certainly something I look up to. I've owned a clinic for quite a while. We've got 3 now, and Mike, I'm wondering how I'm amazed at, like, how long do you focus on something or start it before you give up and say, you know what, like, this is a lost lead? You talk about all those mistakes you made, and we certainly make them quite a bit along the way. And I'm trying to juggle. We've got 3 clinic managers in 3 different areas, so I'm trying to supervise them. It's a lot of moving parts.
Yes. And that's why I'm a big systems guy, Kyle. So my military background showed me that systems are a great way so that you can rely when you have systems and focused roles and shared accountability. So systems, focused roles, and shared accountability, you know what every person on your team needs to do to take care of the client in the clinic. That means if someone's having a real bad day as part of your team, you can help them pull up their socks and you can support them. But it also means as a clinic director and as a clinic owner, you have all these processes in place that are happening. If there's a disconnect, you want to set up the culture and the communication that there's an ability to talk to someone and send that up the chain so that the clinic manager can talk to you or the clinic manager can take care of it. So really it comes down to processes, focus roles, and shared accountability, Kyle.
Amazing. Amazing. That's awesome. Thanks so much, Mike.
No problem. Thank you, man.
Thanks, Kyle. So I've got Corey, who's wanting to ask you a question. I'm just going to add him to the mic here. So Corey, why don't you ask your question to Mike?
Hey, Mike, thank you so much for this discussion. There's a lot of gold here. My question is, I've got a new grad, and we've opened up this clinic. It's been around for a shorter period of time than some of these other veterans that are on right now. And I'm just wondering, how do you get new leads to book with your new grad when they're asking for the person that's been there longer, who's had more experience and built up a reputation around the clinic?
Yeah, and that one, stop me if you've already tried this too, Corey, but that's happened similarly at the clinic I'm at right now, where everybody wants to see a certain person, right? So I've been there the longest and I've built up a reputation, so everybody calls to see me. So we've done a lot of work in coaching around the value discussion at the front desk on the phone. And we've talked about, because we have a mentorship program in place, we actually share that we have a structured mentorship program in place so that everybody will have shared mentorship, and that I'll help if someone's having challenges, or we don't voice it as challenges, sorry. So if they want some more input, I'm helping, and I've got my finger in mentoring every physio within the clinic. And we've got this structured mentorship program to make sure they have the same experience, whether they see me or another physio in the clinic. And we do a lot of coaching around that value conversation for the front desk.
Gotcha. Thank you.
That's a real tough question to ask.
Yeah.
So Corey, thanks so much for fielding that question right there. All right. So Mike, would you be able to share your screen and maybe show us like how ClinicDash can help people with navigating? Because the reason why I'm asking is there's so much gold, like Kyle had said and Corey shared, with what you're talking about. And I'm a visual guy, and I love seeing like graphs and blah 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 and all this stuff and anything. But can you give us a little taste of like how ClinicDash can help people in terms of navigating some of these questions and seeing these tipping points and things like that? Do you mind if you sharing your screen?
Yeah, I can do that. So I'm going to jump ahead too. And I know you like graphs and pie charts probably and stuff like that and visuals like that.
Yeah.
There is none of that in ClinicDash, because when you look at experts on data visualization,
Really?
all that does is trick our brain and create biases. Sorry, Karim.
My Apple Watch is
yeah,
killing me.
dude. Yeah. You're
the
killing
circle.
You got your rings. You got your
Yeah,
because all people are going to look for it. Because it really want your metrics to tell a story. You want them to be meaningful every time. But if they show pictures, what's going to happen is all people are going to look for is if they need to see this, or they need to see this, or they need to see that, right? And they're not going to look at the meaning anymore, and they're not going to look at the value behind what those metrics are talking about.
Yeah.
So I took it. It's all numbers, and so that's where it's clean, but it's all numbers.
All right, let's take a look at it. Let's see.
Yeah.
I'm curious because here you crushed my Apple dreams.
Sorry, dude. Yeah. Apple's a very smart company too. Psychologically, they're there to trick you. They want you to love their stuff from a design perspective, right?
Yeah.
It says that you've disabled participant screen sharing. Sorry, Karim. Yeah, dude.
Okay, there you go. Let's try it again. I apologize, PPD Nation. I'm obviously rusty at this right now. It's been a long time since I run a webinar, and so I apologize for all the technical mishaps here. So 0 out of 10 for me as a host. So I apologize. Hey, there's some graphs in here.
Yeah, sorry. So there's one visual. And that's because I want everybody's eye to go there. And it's a little bit of a speedometer kind of visual, right? Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So this is when someone logs in, they see their individual scorecard. Now there's going to be reds in here because this is our demo site and it's a sandbox. So the numbers aren't representative of someone's actual practice. They're just randomized so I can show people stuff without showing the clinic's data.
Yeah.
But this is what someone sees, the 3, 6, 12 months and their goal. And these are our core 4 for a clinician, right? That we've tested and found that these 4 tell us a lot about the story. That'll then, if people do well on these and you figured out how to price your service well, then your net margins and your net profit are going to do well, right? And then they always see, so the important thing is you see their individual scorecard and then they see the clinic scorecard based on those core 4 as well, because you want to show them how they're contributing to the team, how they're they're held accountable to the team's performance and they're contributing to the team, and that they have a role and something bigger, not just them as an individual. Because physiotherapy can be lonely, right? We're treating and we're one-on-one with clients. Sometimes we don't have a lot of interaction if our utilization is high, right? So this helps them give that warm and fuzzy of, hey, this is how I'm helping out the team.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Now we come over to somewhere and we'll look at this one. There's a clinic dashboard where we do projections here. Now it's June 1st tomorrow. So in this thing, the time zone is set for tomorrow because the last time I showed someone this, they were in Australia. So June 1st tomorrow, it's already June 1st in Australia. So you're going to see zeros and projections for zeros. But what you'll see is past 4 weeks performance, previous month's performance, and then you're going to start to see next month, yesterday, and then month to date. So you're going to see how you're trending along here, and you're going to be able to start to make decisions on how's the team doing, right? How's the clinic doing? And I look at, when I go to monthly projections, I don't really worry about lower extremity, upper extremity, spine much unless I have to really dig deep into someone's story and something's going on that I can't figure out. If I'm looking at just strategizing for the month, I look at all of this stuff and it gives me a lot of great detail. And then by the time I'm 10 days in, based on my model of care, when I'm 10 days into a month, I know exactly how the clinic's going to do.
Awesome. So, and then take me through how the information is popped in. Like how does that work in terms of getting the information into ClinicDash?
Yeah, our front desk pops it in. And we've got it down to the longest it would take someone to pop something in is 14 seconds. And then we do an independent double check of the data, which takes 5 minutes at the end of the day. Wow. And so one of the places we go to, for example, is treatment stats. It's June, but if you look at May, you can see May's treatment stats there. And then you can also, again, expand it to see individual providers and all that kind of stuff. But you add it in here and you choose your provider and it's literally tab and put it all in. It's super easy and streamlined.
So as a clinic owner, when we're looking at that utilization, I mean, you could be like Stephanie in Tahiti right now, looking at the reds and the greens, and she's with her Mai Tai and whatever, and she could be like, time to make a decision from there.
Exactly, right? You can, with the amount of data that's in here, when you can look at just if your core 4 are looking good, and as a clinic owner, your core 8 are looking good, plus your projections are doing well, it takes you 30 seconds to look at, and you know your team's in a good place, or you need to take action, right? And so it's made it really easy and streamlined. And what this does is it creates accountability, right? That's the hardest thing, is that when this supports our processes and procedures and supports all that, and it supports our culture, right? So our culture, it helps keep our culture up through the communication and conversations we have. This is just a support as part of that, but holds everybody accountable to make sure all those processes and procedures are happening. And if something's a blip in the screen, maybe something's going on with someone personally, professionally, whatever it may be, but we try and then hold them up and help them improve as well.
So like just a question from Cindy. So Cindy's talking about whether the software will take data from clinic management systems like Jane. I think, just to confirm, you said that it's a maximum of a 5-minute input. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's 14 seconds for a phone call, for example, but 5 minutes at the end of the day. Literally, it takes we have 5 physios, and for in the morning, our initial opening receptionist or customer experience person puts this data in within 2-3 minutes for the day. And then at the end of the day, it takes 5 minutes for an independent double check just to make sure everything's right, because we make a lot of decisions and performance is based off this, right? So people's performance increases and all that stuff is based off this.
That's amazing.
Yeah, but there are no APIs, Cindy, and the reason is because I've called a lot of the EMR companies, and they define cancellations, no-shows, and all those things in their own way. And it's not reliable, it changes, and sometimes they can't even define it. So this allows you to go in here and define based on your team and what's important to your team for a cancellation, a no-show, a treatment, an assessment, the time, all that kind of stuff. Because the EMRs, they're good for compliance and billing, but they're not good for what's important to a business owner or a clinic owner, which is how your team's actually performing, which then leads into your gross revenue, net margins, all that stuff.
Cool. So I know we're going into OT. I just wanted to answer 2 questions. I know Scott had a burning question. So I'm just going to put Scott on the mic here. And then we got Stephanie. Where's Scott? Scott, you're on the mic, my man.
Great, thanks, Kareem, and thanks, Mike. This is great. I'll echo what everyone else said. Great information. I think my question was answered already when you showed me that first screen share, Mike. I was curious about the utilization rate as to whether you looked at that on the clinic as a whole or per practitioner, but I think from what you showed, the answer would be both, correct?
Yes, yeah. So
Yeah.
we're just scratching the surface. We can go into this and look in real detail here, and
Yeah.
it can get really overwhelming. So we're focused on some of the scratching the surface, but we can get really deep in here, Scott, where we can look at utilization and we can look at treatment planning by body part, all that kind of stuff. And then we look at it by individual physio, all those kind of things. So you can really learn how to use it and to mentor your team to really improve their performance as well.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I think that's great. Yeah, it makes sense to me how you'd use that as a coaching standpoint of somebody that doesn't measure up to the clinic as a whole, I suppose, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Or it doesn't
yeah.
even their goals. So our
Sure.
goals, we have career pathways, right? Depending on where a physio is or where a customer experience person is in their career and what their goals are. So everybody's going to have different goals for their personal scorecard. And then they'll have the clinic averages, which the whole team's contributing towards, right? So it all has to do with that too.
Yeah. Awesome. Great. Thank you.
No problem.
Thanks, Scott. We're gonna do one last question with Stephanie. And so Steph, you're on the mic here.
Unmute, you hear me? Yes.
We do hear you, Steph. How's
Thank you.
Tahiti?
I wish. I said that I can monitor my KPIs well. It doesn't mean that I can make huge changes in my clinics. But my question would be, because I was a clinician for many years. I've now transitioned to be more of a manager within my clinics, and I have partners in all my clinics, and with that comes different personality types and different challenges and different points of view. Anyway, I won't go into that. My question more is regarding, so you're trying to implement all these new things, and I love the idea of personality testing. I think that's something that we need to start doing more. And so when you're trying to implement even as simple as a treatment plan, written treatment plans with people who've been around with you for quite a while, like how do you approach this? Like I'm always super keen to see all these new stats and whatever, but I have to be very careful because exactly as you're saying, this is not about money. This is about treatment. You're giving that wow experience to both your staff and your clients. But yeah, I can be overzealous and yeah, approaching staff that's been around for a while. What advice do you have for me?
Yeah, it comes down, if they've been around for a while, part of what we have discussions around is if they want to do they want to take on a leadership role, whether it's clinical leadership, right, from a clinical mentorship perspective, or from a managing the clinic perspective. And if they want to do one of those two things, you got to lead by example. Right. And so if you're going to put in written treatment plans, people value that. So I bring it always back to the customer as well, the client. And a client loves that. It's tangible for them, right? It's really important to see that because they only remember 20 to 30% of what we say, right? On a good day. And so when we give them something that's tangible, all of a sudden they get this nice, warm and fuzzy, and they feel really good. They can, because people really after an assessment want to know four things. They want to know what's wrong, how long is it going to take to get better, how much is it going to cost me, and then how much work I have to do to get me better. And so they're not going to remember all that stuff that you told them. And if you don't tell them those things very clearly, then it's really hard to get some buy-in. And sometimes when we're trying to teach new physios, but the older physios aren't doing that, and they're not acting as leaders in that way, then I turn that around to, we're not delivering a great service, and we're trying to deliver a great service, and we want you to be a mentor, but we can't even track your performance. How can we show you, how can we get the physios to see that you're great when you're great just because it's a gut feel? And honestly, gut feel from a business perspective is not a great way to go, right? Yeah. And even from a mentorship and growing your caseload and as a physiotherapist practicing, I didn't like that. There were points in clinics I worked in where it's just like, yeah, my fall off is great. I'm doing well. My cancellation rate is great. We've never measured it. And so there are some of the physios who think they're the best physios and the most expert physios out there, that once we started to track their performance, it's like, there's some really nice, 1 or 2 year out new grads that are great people that are performing just as well as you once we start to look at the numbers specifically, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate that.
Thanks, Stephanie. So Mike, I got a question for you. We're just going to go in the gallery view. So we're going to unshare for a second here. So I got a question for you. And I want in the chat, guys, how would you guys like to have a follow-up email from Mike in just like delineating those core 4 for both your clinicians, your staff, and your clinic owner 8? Can you type in the chat, say yes? Awesome. Yeah, I figured that everyone, because I was like, whoa, I was, so that's awesome. So what I'm going to do, Mike, if it's okay with you, we got all the attendees and some that may have missed this session. Let's get together. We're going to write up an email, and then what we can do on the bottom of that email, would you be open to sharing like a one-on-one with any of these attendees and anyone watching this replay about going through ClinicDash? Would that be cool with you? So we could maybe do a calendar or something like that on the bottom of that email. They can schedule a time with you to do that demo. But also I wanted to ask you guys, how would you guys be interested in learning a little bit more about, because we didn't get to scaling and growth. We didn't get to like the benchmarking and projections. In the chat, guys, follow up. Hit that in that chat. I want to know right now, live poll, how many of you guys want a follow-up session with my man, Mike Major? Put that in the chat right now. We got yes, we got Kyle. Yeah, this is overwhelming, man. We got to do a follow-up. So look out for that. What we're going to do is, Mike, how about we do this? We'll do a follow-up email to the people who have registered. We'll do our core 4 for each and for the clinic owner itself. And then we'll do an invite. Thank you for making that time for our attendees to go through ClinicDash. And we're going to do a follow-up webinar, because this has been amazing. And I really appreciate, Mike. You are definitely the maestro of metrics, man. And really, I apologize to the PPDNation on this for all these technical things. It's been a while, so obviously I need to get a little more Zoom friendly. But I really want to thank everybody on this call
thank you
for participating, to listening to the mastery from Mike. I'm truly honored, Mike, to see this wizardry, and I love how you've balanced the psychology with the insight and the academy of knowing your metrics and what to how to pivot from them. And I really appreciate you sharing these. This is really resourceful information, and you've really been vulnerable with sharing this. And I really appreciate that. And I'm looking forward to everyone joining on that follow-up call, guys. So thank you very much, guys. I really appreciate you guys taking your evening out today and sharing it with Mike and I. Mike, thank you so much. PPDNation, thank you so much as we conclude for today, guys. All right, Mike, thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
All right.